Hey guys, how's it going? This is Alan Goodwin with Comma Worship Solutions. We're here today at a brand new integration we just wrapped up a couple weeks ago. We're at Colonial Hills Church in Southaven, Mississippi. This is a church that's been around for over 50 years and has moved around over the years to fit its identity and changing congregation and all that. And so we're in a space that actually belonged to it a long time ago and then was owned by the city for a while. This was a courthouse and a jail and all sorts of things, the tag office, all those things. And now we bought it back and renovated it, and we were the integrator for audio, video, lighting world, everything you see. And so we're here in the sanctuary now. I believe we've gotten about 200 people in here, give or take, how you do the aisles and all that. Okay. So we ended up with about 13.5-foot ceilings with the drop ceiling, and there are a couple challenges in this room. And we had these poles that had to stay, and we have HVAC that had to be a little bit exposed below the drop ceiling. But I believe we made it work nonetheless and made the most of this really beautiful space we have here. This campus was in a gym for the last 5 years, a little over 5 years, and so it's really quite an upgrade even from that mobile situation pretty much. So yeah, I'll show y'all what we got here. Here we have front of house. And one of my favorite things, this is a small detail, but it ends up being a great thing. These are angled caps that we had some craftsmen make, and it prevents people from setting their coffee cups and their Bibles down because that clutters things up, and obviously it can spill drinks on expensive equipment, which you don't want. And I think this particular set turned out really nice. They did a good job on it. In the audio world, it's a relatively simple setup. We didn't do a whole lot of new gear in this campus, this integration. We really just moved what we had and kind of adjusted it for this space, and we focused more of our work on infrastructure items like permanent cable runs, nice patch bays, patch panels, rigging that's done well to support future expansion, distributed audio video. There's a Spanish translation room in here. There's future broadcast. Those kind of things, infrastructure related, is what we really focused our time on. And we ended up just using most of the equipment because most of the equipment was still very, very good and in good condition. So we were able to save some money that way and set it up for future steps if they one day want to replace a console, upgrade wireless mics, so whatever it is. We don't have to do all those steps now, but because we made the infrastructure steps done on the front end, it allows those steps to be easier to do, especially when you start looking at the finances of all those things. These are big capital expenses you're talking about with 5 figures, 6 figures of equipment. And so if the infrastructure's in place, that saves a lot on the labor to where you're just having to tackle a relatively simple install. So that's why we prioritize it this way if the customer's on board with that idea. So we have an M32 console, just as plain and simple as it sounds. For PA, we have RCF HDL2 line arrays, which is a little overkill for this room, but hey, it's what we had, and it sounds great, obviously. Subwoofers, we have 4 EV QRX double 18 subs underneath the stage in the middle, and they're in a cardioid subarray, so 2 of them are right in front, and 2 of them are a little bit behind it. I did the math to where it cancels low end on stage to help with rumble and feedback and all that, and they're faced backwards, the 2 on the back faced backwards and delayed so that it makes a cardioid array. Very cool approach to that. I did, because this is low ceilings, I did throw all of this into my PA coverage software and actually map it out. And we can show you the map too. I'll send Mark all those files. Because when you have low ceilings, even if you have line arrays, which spread the sound very clearly and evenly, low ceilings are still a challenge. And there's always a challenge between the depth of the speaker, no matter how high the ceiling. If you go too far back, you're behind the stage and you're more prone to feedback. But if you go too far forward, you fix the feedback problem. But if your front row's real close to the stage, then you may not actually cover that front row very well. And so when you have low ceilings and that existing ever-present challenge of the depth of the PA, it can be really specific. 6 inches here and there even can really change a lot about how the PA fills a room evenly and clearly. So I put this in the software to get it exactly right, and the software prints out exactly the angles we should have and the XY location, all of those things, and it's really handy. So yeah, that's audio world. We obviously have a lot of stage items as well, like wireless mics, wireless ears, all those things we'll take a look at in a minute. Video world, we have just a simple ProPresenter setup. Right now it's not even on a switcher or anything like that. It's just going straight to its destinations. Its destinations are a Panasonic projector. It's a laser projector, 14K lumen, and it has an ultra short throw lens on it. It's about this big, and it was an $11,000 lens to give you an idea of what it's capable of. To the point where this image is 16 feet long. It's literally a 16 by 9 feet image. And that lens is right below 5.5 feet away from that screen. So it's a pretty impressive technology. We did that because of the low ceiling heights. We knew this screen would be a backdrop screen / a presentation screen. And so people need to stand pretty much right in front of it to fill the stage well and not have the stage sticking out into the room. So we needed there to be no shadows cast on that screen, even if someone's standing relatively close to it. So that's why we opted for that in this particular venue. It was an expensive choice, but it was one of those situations where we knew that was a wise place to put that kind of money over something else. So that's video world. We also have a confidence display here, pretty standard issue. And we do have a camera here that's just going straight to a Spanish translation and recording feed. It doesn't actually do IMAG or anything else in this room. It's only for recording and Spanish translation purposes. The Spanish translation is a wireless system that has a fin hanging up above the stage, and then people speaking Spanish are free to come in here and get some COVID-friendly headphones and actually a Sennheiser receiver. Pretty nice. Besides this antenna right here, that's not that great, but we have some extra parts everywhere. So it's a pretty neat approach to Spanish translation. Seems to work well for this campus. Finally, we have lighting. This is a Grand MA onPC setup. We're running Grand MA 2 right now, so there's a node back here that handles basically the interface. It handles the Cat 6, in this case, to DMX, and it sends out 2 universes, and it's all controlled via this touchscreen Dell laptop that they have also put a extra display on, and so we helped integrate all that. And so we have there's no actual faders, but it's a nice touch screen, and the faders are still very responsive. The buttons are still very nice. And so it ends up being a pretty great way to run this. The 2 universes, one goes to house lights and wall panels that are for some future decorative LED stained glass panels they're going to have on these sidewalls. So we went ahead and integrated that, part of the integration I talked about. And then the other universe goes to everything on stage, so front lighting, color wash, movers, hazer, anything you see that's on stage. So these are Doug Fleener wall panels, and they are designed to essentially be the lighting console when the lighting console is off. So there are several versions of this, several brands that make things like this. These are unique because there is no external brain that you have to put in a rack somewhere and then feed cable to these. All the cable actually just comes straight to these, so the brain is in this panel. And it's a little bit more expensive of a panel that way, but you don't have to buy a brain, so the overall system ends up being a lot more value engineered. And so this particular one has 10 presets counting the dedicated off button. I've labeled them here, and it's very basic. It's like a lot of others that are similar to this, is that if the console is on, it knows it and it makes it red, so you can't hit any of these and mess it up. And the second the console goes off, it releases to this. In other words, this can tell there's no DMX input coming in, and it becomes the starting point of the DMX chain for both universes. And because both universes are on this panel, that means not only does it control house light level, which are all DMX house lights, it can also pull up scenes or cues from the theatrical lighting system. So we have some that are just house lights. We have some that are house with front light. So if you needed to come in here and you wanted just an easy wedding or funeral or meeting space scene where you didn't want to hire a lighting guy, you could just hit a button and you would have some stage light and see faces. Or there's a couple that even pull up color and you could have a simple night of worship. If you only have a few people or it's a student event or something that doesn't have a full production team, you can easily pull up something very easily there. So that's pretty much the lighting scene or setup. We have an MDG hazer in here and a few Chauvet fixtures. Nothing crazy complicated, but it makes a nice look for the room. As far as audio, there is one thing I want to show you up here. I am very happy with how this turned out. You notice how we hid all the fly bar and rigging elements of this array stack above the drop ceiling. And so normally you see that bar at the top of the speakers. Normally there's that bar and several other pieces, shackles, all the other things that you see as a part of a line array hang. And since we have low ceilings here, and we're trying to deal with sightline and even spread, and just so it looks very uniform and nice, we measured it out so that it hides all that perfectly, so that the top of the array stack is right at that drop ceiling, so that we don't waste any height on that. And then the drop ceiling guys were kind enough to frame it out exactly there. And so it's a small thing, but I'm really happy with how that turned out. I think that's a nice professional look. We also did a few things like PowerCon receptacles. We worked with the electrician on this. The labels are not all the way done there, but we have for circuits that are sensitive, that we don't want vacuums plugged into, or even more importantly, circuits that are on the isolated ground transformer, that are specifically audio and video, not lighting, to keep hum out and all those kind of things. We want to know what they are, and we want to be able to only plug in our equipment to that, which is mostly PowerCon anyway. And so I went ahead and just had them wire up PowerCon outlets there. That way we know they're ours and nobody else can plug in a phone or a vacuum to them. So it really works out well. We went with a portable stage in here for now. It was just easier, and who knows what this space will become as we get used to it. So we just stayed with it, but it's a nice portable stage that has a drape and all that, so it looks relatively permanent if you didn't know any better. Kind of the hub of everything back here. It is the main rack that has all your wireless. It has a M32 for monitor console in here, so it's a separate console they control with their phones that goes to wired ears and wireless ears. We have Trax interface that has a long USB cable going over there. We have network. We have, these are some headphone amps that go through various snakes, and the actual audio snakes themselves. We have some crown amps for the subwoofers in there, and then obviously an array of power situations. But one thing we haven't finished in here yet, it's probably the last thing on the list, is power sequencing. I'm waiting on a shipment that was back ordered, but if you notice, a good spot to point it out is this box on the end of this stage light truss here. See the white receptacle sticking out? That is a module for this very modular type of power sequencer from Lowell, and basically you just put those modules wherever you want power to be on a sequenced switch, and you can have as many steps as you want with the products they offer, and you just tell each of the modules what step you want it on in the sequence, and you plug it in where there's already power run, and then you run a Cat6 cable to it for control, and that's it. And then there's a brain that sits somewhere, and then you can have remote switches everywhere, so we have a toggle at front of house to where you could hit that, and lighting, audio, whatever else you want on it can come on. We wouldn't put things like projector or computers on it, obviously, because they need cool down times, those kind of things. But it's a very inexpensive way to do a power sequencer that's still very powerful, pun intended, because you don't have to have a Lintec panel or anything like that taking up space. Those are very expensive. And so this is a great solution that I've found for situations like this where we can change it eventually and all that. In here we have the green room and future broadcast space. You see it's kind of a work in progress, but we went ahead and set up everything for broadcast one day. So we have future conduits. These go all the way up so we can run cable easily. We have dedicated circuits for all this that are transformer isolated. We have a panel that has SDI from all over the building, and even some network. Look at that power sequencer, so we could put this on the power sequencer. We have some audio things for comm and for whatever else we could need. We've got network, kind of just setting it up for whatever we decide broadcast should look like. So right now it's just sending feeds to lobby and that kind of thing, so it's not really being utilized all the way. And then this will be audio, broadcast audio, so it's a lot simpler of a panel, but it's got, Ethercon feeds from snakes. It's got some actual analog feeds as well, just in case we need those. And so it'll make the transition very seamless. Again, just build a desk, put some gear on it, and get it running. All the cables are run, everything's terminated, all things are done. So it'll really make those future upgrades a lot more simple. So here on stage, now I can't take credit for a lot of this. A lot of this is due to the worship pastor here. He's a guy named Josh Campbell. He's really great with musical technology and with so many things. He's very talented. So he has built this, this keyboard setup. It's actually a main stage setup that's running off of a Mac Mini back there, and it's being controlled by this iPad just as a touchscreen display, pretty much through Luna display, I believe. And then this is just a MIDI controller, so it's a Studio Logic. It's actually my favorite. It has really great hammer action. And then the sounds from the Mac Mini main stage rig go out through an interface and then into the console. So it's a relatively simple setup, but obviously looks great, sounds great, gives you way more flexibility with virtual instruments than just a simple keyboard. And we have it in a hollowed out shell, so it looks like an actual piano, obviously. And then they have this setup that Josh is, I think, kind of still playing around with different elements and all that, but he's essentially built his own electric drum set, and he's put some elements of real drums here to try to make it look a little more natural. So these drums are actually not used. You see the kick pad, same with this there. He somehow mounted that inside this shell. And then he uses this real cymbal just for swells, because they found that that's the one thing this can't really do. If you're an electric drum connoisseur, you've probably known that cymbals are the hardest thing to get right on anything, especially with kick and snare being so sample heavy nowadays anyway. Those are pretty easy to get right. Still not the same, but they're pretty easy to get right. Cymbals are the hardest part, since there's such a variety of ways that you play them, hi-hats included. But for this campus, it's keeping the volume down a lot, and I admire his goals of keeping the stage volume down and still trying to make it really good. So that's what we're doing here, and we have Track's computer over here that the drummer uses, and we got a bass set up. We have a house pedal board that I've actually helped him with. They have this Helix LT that does a lot of delay and kind of more effect things, but then we chose analog or traditional pedals that are not as strong on the Helix to do, so things like the Memory Man, it's hard to get that analog sound out of a model. We believe the Iridium had better amp models than this. The Diamond compressor is a legendary compressor, so it sounds better than the compressors there. Octaves are always stronger on a POG. And then like an actual volume pedal, actual tuner. So it's a neat little hybrid setup that I think works for them and is a pretty great way to get good tone without breaking the bank and doing an entirely individualized pedal board setup. So yeah, it sounds good in here. It looks good in here. We have, you see all the effect lights are on what I call the stage pipe here. And we have these bar lights pixelated out on a high channel mode, so you can do wave effects and different things with them, kind of as a pixel mapped-ish setup, as close as you can get to it. So it's a nice kind of look, since we don't really have a backdrop or any other visual elements. It's more than just lights, it's kind of a design to it. And then we have those Colorado pars that are doing basic color wash. We also have, they're not on right now, but we have some, what I'm using as blinders, some shorter bars that stick straight out, so they can obviously get very bright because of their angle. And then we use this bar for RF antennas and various other things that need to be hung over the stage. And then we have the 45-degree front lighting truss that we actually didn't put the lights on here. Cabling is a little messy, but that's okay. We got some slim pars on those, and they're just warm white fixtures that do a good job. It's been a great space for them so far. They've had nothing but good things to say. There's always kinks that we work out as we go. We're figuring out what best volume levels fit this congregation. We're figuring out what the power sequencer needs to look like. We're figuring out what lighting needs to look like. We're figuring out all those things, but those are just configuration, small tweak things. Overall, the install worked from day one, and we're really excited to be a part of this one. So.